Welcome to the Illusion of Certainty. Written by Quester, this book is an invitation to question what we often take for granted. The certainty we cling to in a world that is anything but predictable. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore how our minds create illusions of control, how we resist ambiguity, and how embracing uncertainty can open the door to growth, clarity, and peace. Whether you're listening out of curiosity, seeking clarity, or standing at a crossroads, I'm honored to share this journey with you. Let's begin. Have you ever made a decision you couldn't quite explain? Found yourself going with the crowd, chasing perfection, or fearing outcomes that never even happened? You're not alone. Every day, invisible forces shape our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, not through magic, but through well-documented psychological patterns. These are the silent saboteurs, mental traps that feel natural, even rational, but quietly lead us off course. This audiobook isn't about fixing you, because you're not broken. It's about revealing what's already operating beneath the surface. Each chapter unpacks a subtle mental trap that distorts how we think, feel, and choose. By the end, you'll not only recognize these patterns in your own life, you'll understand them deeply enough to pause, reflect, and choose differently. No hype, no overselling, just real insight, clearly explained. In-group bias, why we favor us over them. Imagine you're at a sports game, cheering for your team. When they score, you feel pride, but when the opposing team scores, you feel frustration. Similarly, in a work meeting, you're more likely to support an idea from a colleague in your department simply because they're one of us. This is in-group bias, the tendency to favor members of our own group over others. In-group bias is rooted in human psychology and can strengthen unity within groups, but also lead to prejudice and conflict. Let's explore why we often divide the world into us and them. What is in-group bias? In-group bias is when we view members of our group more favorably than others. This can happen in many contexts, from sports teams to workplaces. For example, a manager might favor employees from their alma mater. A fan might excuse bad behavior from their favorite player. A student may collaborate more with classmates from similar backgrounds. Why does in-group bias happen? Several factors drive in-group bias. Evolutionary roots. Early humans survived by cooperating within groups, which led to loyalty and favoritism. Social identity. Our sense of self is tied to the groups we belong to, and favoring those groups boosts our self-esteem. Cognitive simplification. Grouping people helps us navigate the world, but often leads to bias. Fear of the unknown. We tend to trust people like us and fear those who are different. Resource competition. Limited resources heighten in-group favoritism. Examples of in-group bias. In-group bias can show up in various ways. Sports fandom. Fans cheer for their team and view opposing fans as rivals. Workplace. Managers may favor candidates with similar backgrounds. Politics. Party members often view opposing parties negatively. Social media, online groups reinforce in-group bias by isolating differing views. Historical conflicts. In-group bias has fueled violence and discrimination throughout history. Consequences of in-group bias. In-group bias has both positive and negative effects. Positive. It fosters unity and loyalty. Negative. It can lead to prejudice, division, missed opportunities, and narrow thinking. Overcoming in-group bias. To reduce in-group bias, seek diversity, engage with people from different groups to foster empathy. Focus on common goals. Emphasize shared values instead of differences. Promote inclusion. Create environments where everyone feels valued. Encourage intergroup contact. Positive interactions can reduce bias. The power of unity. While in-group bias can lead to division, it also highlights our need for connection. When used positively, it can strengthen teamwork and shared purpose. Final thought. Expanding the circle. In-group bias is natural, but it challenges us to broaden our definition of us. By embracing diversity, we can build a more inclusive world. So, next time you favor someone because they're one of us, ask, what if us included everyone? That's it for now. I'll be right here for the next chapter. Have you ever liked something just because everyone else did? This is known as the bandwagon effect, a powerful force that influences the way we think, decide, and behave. From politics to fashion, from financial markets to tech trends, we're often following the crowd more than we realize. In this chapter, we'll explore why the bandwagon effect happens, where it shows up, the risks it carries, and how to resist it. Let's begin with the psychology behind it. The bandwagon effect is deeply rooted in how our brains are wired to respond to others. 1. Social proof, also called informational social influence. Coined by Robert Cialdini in his book Influence, this idea suggests we look to others in uncertain situations to decide what to do. Imagine walking past two restaurants, it's one full, the other empty. We naturally assume the full one is better. That's social proof. Second normative, social influence. We conform not just to be right, but to be liked. Fashion trends? Most people follow them not because they love the style, but because they want to belong. Third, cognitive dissonance. When our beliefs clash with the crowd, it creates discomfort. So we shift our beliefs just to feel at ease. Ever disliked a trend, then caught yourself liking it later? That's dissonance, quietly fading. Where do we see this in the real world? Politics and elections. Many people vote for whoever seems to be leading, just to be on the winning side. Media coverage and polls amplify this effect by creating a sense of momentum. Consumer behavior. Products become popular simply because, well, they're already popular. Think viral TikTok items, trending books, or must-have gadgets. And in tech, we join platforms like Facebook because our friends are already there. That's a network effect. So, why does this actually work? Simple. Our brains love shortcuts. Heuristics, quick mental rules, help us make decisions fast. And the most common one? If everyone is doing it, it must be right. But there are serious risks. Groupthink. We suppress doubts to keep group harmony, leading to bad decisions in politics, business, and society. Manipulation and exploitation. Marketers and propagandists know exactly how to exploit the bandwagon effect. Fake reviews, paid influencers, bot-driven trends all create artificial popularity. Suppression of innovation. If everyone chases what's trendy, fresh ideas get ignored. Think of electric cars, initially mocked, now mainstream. So, how can we resist this invisible pull? 1. Think critically. Ask yourself, is this trend valuable or just popular? 2. Know your biases. Understanding herd mentality helps you stay objective. 3. Slow down. Give yourself space before jumping in. Time brings clarity. In conclusion, the bandwagon effect is a double-edged sword. It creates connection, but also fuels irrational decisions. It helps us adapt, but can be easily exploited. When we learn to recognize it, we gain freedom, the power to choose for ourselves. So next time everyone's rushing toward the latest thing, ask, is this truly for me? Key takeaways. The bandwagon effect is driven by social proof, fear of missing out, and a desire to belong. It affects politics, consumer behavior, and tech adoption. It saves mental effort, but at the cost of independent thinking. The best way to counter it? Awareness, reflection, and courage to walk your own path. Let's move forward with awareness in mind. That's it for now. I'll be right here for the next chapter. Have you ever read a horoscope and felt like it described you perfectly? Or taken a personality quiz that seemed to know who you really are? You're not alone. What you experienced is something called the Barnum effect, also known as the Forer effect. This is a psychological phenomenon where people believe vague, general statements about their personality are actually deeply personal and highly accurate. It's named after the legendary showman P.T. Barnum, who once said, "There's a sucker born every minute." And unfortunately, he wasn't wrong. Section 1. Understanding the Barnum Effect. So, what exactly is it? It's the human tendency to accept broad, generic statements as if they were unique truths about ourselves. Why does it work? Because of powerful cognitive biases, subjective validation. If something feels true, we believe it is true, even if it could apply to anyone. Confirmation. Bias, we remember the parts that match our self-image and quietly ignore the rest. The desire for meaning. We want to understand ourselves, so when something sounds insightful, we cling to it. Section 2. Real-world examples. Astrology and horoscopes. You are adaptable but sometimes indecisive. Sure sounds personal, but it could describe almost anyone. Personality tests. You're introverted in crowds but open with close friends. That's not deep insight. That's just being human. Psychics and cold readings. You've experienced a deep loss. Of course you have. We all have. That's the point. These are Barnum statements, designed to feel specific while actually being universal. Then there's the rainbow ruse. You're usually calm, but sometimes emotional. It covers both ends, and so it always feels true. Section 3, the psychology behind the illusion. Why do we fall for this? Because we want to feel seen. We crave insight. We bend vague praise into personal meaning. And unfortunately, that mirror is often used to manipulate us. Section 4, the real dangers, scams. Fake psychics, fraudulent self-help gurus, all profiting from your desire to feel understood. Bad decisions. People choose partners, careers, even health treatments, based on horoscopes and fake tests. Stereotypes. You're a Gemini, you must be two-faced. That's not insight, that's prejudice. Section 5. How to recognize and resist. Here's how to protect yourself. Ask, could this apply to almost anyone? Look for specificity. Real insights are detailed and not vague. Try the reverse test. If the opposite also feels true, it's probably meaningless. Stay aware. Be skeptical of quizzes, horoscopes, and cold readings. Use science. Rely on evidence-based tools like the Big 5 personality traits, not fluff. Conclusion: choose clarity over comfort. The Barnum effect teaches us we are all vulnerable to illusion, especially when it flatters us. But with awareness comes power. You stop falling for clever tricks and start seeking real insight. Final takeaways. The Barnum effect explains why vague statements feel personal. It fuels horoscopes, quizzes, and fortune tellers. Critical thinking is your best defense. Awareness leads to better choices and genuine self-understanding. And in a world full of manipulation, that's a superpower. That's it for now. I'll be right here for the next chapter. Imagine this. You're in a heated argument with a friend. They're clearly upset, but you just don't get it. You think, they're overreacting. It's not that serious. Later, when you're the emotional one, suddenly everything makes sense. That mental flip, it's called the empathy gap, a bias that clouds our ability to understand others' emotions, or even our own. Let's explore. What is the empathy gap? The empathy gap is a cognitive blind spot. When we're calm, it's hard to imagine being angry or overwhelmed. And when we're emotional, it's just as hard to picture feeling calm again. It works both ways. Hot to cold. In a heated state, logic is hard to access. cold to hot. In a calm moment, we forget how powerful emotions can be. Let's bring this to life. Someone says, "I'd never lose my temper." But later in the heat of an argument, they do. A shopper, starving, overfills their cart, forgetting that hunger fades. The sober friend, they swear, "I'd never drink and drive." But a few drinks in, their judgment shifts. Why does this happen? Our brains process emotions in biased ways. When we feel intensely, logic takes a back seat. Memory is also emotional. It's hard to recall how we felt when we're in a different state. And we overestimate how rational we really are. Most of all, empathy takes effort, and we don't always try. The empathy gap in everyday life. You're hungry, everything in the store looks good. You buy way more than you need. You're angry. You say things you don't mean, things you later regret. You plan to wake up at 5 a.m. to work out. But when the alarm goes off, you snooze it. These are all classic signs of the gap. Why does it matter? Because it affects our lives, misjudging others, making decisions we later regret, sabotaging our own goals. The empathy gap leads to missed understanding and missed connection. Can we bridge the gap? Yes. Try perspective taking. Ask yourself, what would I feel in their place? Reflect on times your emotions changed your behavior. Plan for how you'll actually feel, not just how you feel now. Ask for outside perspectives. Practice mindfulness. These steps close the gap. The silver lining? Empathy is a skill, not a trait. The more we understand emotions, the more grace we offer others and ourselves. Final thought. The empathy gap shows just how complex we are. It reminds us that we're not always consistent. We don't always act logically, but that's what makes us human. Recognizing this gap is the first step to better choices, deeper connection, and wiser living. So next time you feel misunderstood or can't understand someone else, remember, the gap is real, but it can be crossed. That's the end of this chapter. I'll meet you in the next one. Have you ever seen a streak of red at the roulette table and thought, black must be next? Or noticed a basketball player make several shots in a row and felt certain they're on fire? If so, you've experienced the clustering illusion, our mind's tendency to see patterns in random data. At its core, the clustering illusion is our brain's way of making sense of the world. We're wired to find patterns, even when there are none. And while this instinct once helped our ancestors survive, today it often leads us astray, especially in areas like gambling, investing, and decision-making. Where the illusion shows up. 1. Gambling. A roulette player sees the ball land on black 5 times in a row. They bet big on red, thinking it's due. But in reality, each spin is independent. The odds haven't changed. 2. The stock market. An investor sees a stock rise for a week and assumes it's on a hot streak. Another panics after a few drops and sells. But short-term trends are often just noise, not signals. 3. Sports. In basketball, the hot hand fallacy is common. A player hits several shots and suddenly everyone believes they're unstoppable. Yet statistically, those streaks are often random. 4. Superstitions. A person sees the number 7 appear on their lottery ticket 3 times in a row. They start betting more, believing it's lucky. But the odds haven't changed, it's just chance. 5. Health scares. Clusters of cancer cases in a neighborhood often trigger fear of environmental causes. While those links can be real, sometimes such clusters arise purely by chance, and jumping to conclusions can mislead investigations. Why we fall for it. Our brains are designed to look for patterns. In the wild, spotting a pattern, like rustling bushes meaning danger, when it was key to survival. But today, that same instinct leads to false positives. We also rely on mental shortcuts like the representativeness heuristic. This makes us assume small samples should mirror the whole. So when a coin lands heads 5 times, we think tails must be next, even though the odds are still 50-50. Another issue, we misunderstand what randomness looks like. We expect it to be evenly spread, but real randomness often clumps together. Clusters, streaks, they're natural, not meaningful. Emotions also play a role. A perceived pattern might excite or scare us, making it more memorable. Over time, we start to believe it's real. And finally, confirmation bias kicks in. We notice patterns that support our beliefs and ignore ones that don't. Real-world impacts. Poor decisions. Investors overreact, gamblers lose big, and people make emotional choices based on phantom trends. Superstitions thrive. Coincidences feel like signs, not chance. Research goes off track. Clusters in data can be mistaken for causation. Businesses waste resources. Overinterpreting short-term data leads to misguided strategies. Critical thinking erodes. People rely more on gut feelings than on facts. How to see through the illusion. 1. Learn how randomness works. Streaks and clusters are normal. 2. Think statistically. Look at the big picture, not just a few data points. 3. Consult experts. In finance or health, objective analysis is crucial. 4. Challenge yourself. Ask, is there really a pattern here or just coincidence? 5. Use simulations. Tools that show how randomness behaves can open your eyes to how often it fools us. Final thought. The clustering illusion shows us how easily we can be tricked by chance. But it also offers a powerful lesson. When we understand our biases, we make better decisions. In a world full of noise, learning to spot real signals and ignore the static is a skill worth mastering. That's it for now. I'll be right here for the next chapter. Think about a past vacation. Chances are you remember the sunny days, the delicious meals, and the laughter with friends or family. But what about the delayed flight, the sunburn, or the argument you had? Those negative memories might feel like they've faded into the background, overshadowed by the positive ones. This tendency to remember positive experiences more vividly than negative ones is known as the fading affect bias. The fading affect bias is a fascinating psychological phenomenon that reveals how our minds selectively preserve and discard memories. It's like a mental filter that softens the edges of our past, making life seem a little brighter in hindsight. Let's explore this bias in depth and uncover why our brains are wired to let the bad times fade while the good times linger. What is the fading affect bias? The fading affect bias refers to the tendency for the emotions associated with negative memories to fade faster than those linked to positive memories. In other words, we remember positive experiences more vividly and emotionally intensely than negative ones. This bias was first identified by researchers studying autobiographical memory, the way we recall events from our own lives. They found that over time, people's negative emotions, e.g., sadness, anger, frustration, about past events diminish more quickly than their positive emotions, e.g., joy, pride, excitement. Why does the fading affect bias happen? The fading affect bias is thought to serve an important psychological function. It helps us maintain a positive outlook on life and cope with past hardships. Here are some key reasons behind this bias. Emotional regulation. Forgetting or downplaying negative emotions helps us move on from painful experiences. It's a way for our minds to protect us from being overwhelmed by past suffering. Self-preservation. Focusing on positive memories boosts our self-esteem and overall well-being. It reinforces the idea that life is generally good, even if it has its ups and downs. Cognitive efficiency. Our brains are designed to prioritize information that is useful for survival and happiness. Negative memories, while important for learning, are less useful in the long term than positive ones. Social bonding. Sharing positive memories strengthens social connections. People are more likely to bond over happy stories than over tales of misery. Real-life examples of the fading affect bias. Vacation memories. You might remember the breathtaking views and fun activities from a trip, but forget the stress of planning or the discomfort of travel. Relationships. After a breakup, people often recall the good times they shared with their ex-partner more vividly than the arguments or reasons for the split. Childhood nostalgia. Many people look back on their childhood with fondness, remembering the joy of playing with friends or family holidays, while forgetting the struggles or disappointments they faced. Work experiences. When reflecting on a past job, you might remember the camaraderie with coworkers and the sense of accomplishment, but downplay the stress or boredom you felt. Sports and competitions. Athletes often remember their victories more vividly than their losses. The thrill of winning tends to stick, while the sting of defeat fades. The consequences of the fading affect bias. The fading affect bias has both positive and negative implications. Positive consequences. Emotional resilience. By letting negative emotions fade, we're better able to cope with adversity and maintain a positive outlook. Improved well-being. Focusing on positive memories can boost happiness and life satisfaction. Stronger relationships. Sharing positive memories with others can strengthen social bonds and create a sense of connection. Negative consequences. Overlooking lessons. If we forget the negative aspects of past experiences, we might miss important lessons or repeat the same mistakes. Unrealistic optimism. The bias can lead to an overly rosy view of the past, making it harder to prepare for future challenges. Nostalgia trap. Dwelling too much on positive memories can make it difficult to live in the present or move forward. How to balance the fading affect bias. While the fading affect bias is a natural and often helpful part of how we process memories, it's important to strike a balance. Here's how. Reflect on both sides. When recalling past experiences, make an effort to remember both the positive and negative aspects. This can help you gain a more balanced perspective. Learn from the past. Use negative memories as opportunities for growth. Ask yourself, what did I learn from this experience? Practice gratitude. While it's great to focus on positive memories, also take time to appreciate the present moment. Gratitude can help you stay grounded and mindful. Journaling. Writing about your experiences, both good and bad, can help you process emotions and create a more accurate record of your past. Seek feedback. Talk to others who shared the experience. They might remember things differently, helping you see the bigger picture. The silver lining, a built-in coping mechanism. The fading affect bias is like a mental safety net. It softens the blow of past hardships and helps us focus on the good in life. While it's not perfect, it's a testament to our brain's ability to adapt and protect us from emotional overwhelm. Final thought. Embracing the full picture. The fading affect. Bias reminds us that our memories are not perfect recordings of the past. They're stories we tell ourselves. These stories shape how we see ourselves and the world around us. By embracing both the positive and negative aspects of our experiences, we can create a richer, more nuanced narrative of our lives. So the next time you find yourself reminiscing about the good old days, take a moment to acknowledge the challenges you've overcome too. After all, it's the mix of joy and struggle that makes life truly meaningful. We'll stop here. But the story isn't over. More awaits. I'll meet you in the next one. The Just World Hypothesis. Why we believe the world is fair, even when it isn't. Ever thought people just get what they deserve? If so, you're not alone. This is known as the Just World Hypothesis. We want to believe the world is fair, that if we're good, life will protect us. Comforting, but not always true. Psychologist Melvin Lerner noticed this in the 60s. When people saw others suffer, they often blamed the victim. Not out of cruelty, but to protect their belief in a just world. So what are the main ideas here? First, belief in fairness. If good actions lead to good outcomes, then we feel safe. Second, victim. Blaming. She must have done something. He brought it on himself. This helps us keep the illusion of fairness. Third, moral comfort. It gives us peace, thinking bad things only happen for a reason. Fourth, cultural reinforcement of stories and values like hard work and merit feed this belief. But here's the downside. It makes us ignore bigger problems. We blame people instead of seeing poverty, racism, or inequality, and that hurts those who are already suffering. Life isn't always fair. Sometimes things just happen. No reason, no cause. Examples: poverty. People call them lazy. Sickness, blamed for their lifestyle. Crime, we question the victim. It affects how we treat others and how we build our systems. So how do we fight this bias? Empathy, complexity, perspective. Question the easy answers. Yes, we crave fairness, but real fairness starts with understanding. Because the world isn't always just, but we can be. That's the end of this chapter. I'll meet you in the next one. Have you ever found yourself avoiding bad news just to feel better in the moment? Maybe you didn't check your bank account after overspending, or you delayed that doctor's appointment, hoping everything would be fine. If so, you're not alone. This is what psychologists call the ostrich effect. It's a mental habit where we ignore uncomfortable or threatening information by, well, burying our heads in the sand, just like an ostrich. But here's the catch. While this kind of avoidance might bring temporary relief, it often leads to much bigger problems down the road. So, what exactly is the ostrich effect? At its core, it's about turning away from things we don't want to face, especially when they cause stress, anxiety, or fear. Instead of tackling an issue directly, we pretend it's not there. We hope it'll just go away. Let's look at a few examples. Someone overspends and avoids checking their account balance. Another person skips a checkup, afraid of what the doctor might say. An investor ignores their portfolio during a market crash just to avoid seeing losses. All of these are classic signs of the ostrich effect in action. So, why do we do this? It's not just about being careless. There are some powerful psychological forces at play. First, there's the fear of negative emotions. Facing tough news triggers stress or sadness. So we avoid it, just to feel okay, for now. Second, it's about cognitive dissonance. When reality doesn't match how we see ourselves, it creates discomfort. Avoiding the truth helps us keep our self-image intact. Third, we tend to focus on short-term comfort, even if it means long-term pain. And finally, there's the optimism bias. We think things will work themselves out, even if that's unlikely. Where does this show up in real life? In personal finance, people avoid budgeting or looking at debt, only to find themselves deeper in financial trouble. In health, delaying checkups or ignoring symptoms can let small issues grow into serious problems. At work, employees avoid difficult conversations. Managers ignore signs of burnout or low morale. And in society, governments delay action on climate change. Communities turn a blind eye to injustice until it's too late. So what's the impact of all this avoidance? Problems grow. What starts small can spiral. We miss key opportunities to act early and fix things. And the stress, it doesn't go away, it just builds. Worst of all, it leads to poor decisions because we're not seeing the full picture. So, how do we overcome the ostrich effect? Step 1. Acknowledge when you're avoiding something. Notice the urge to look away and pause. Step 2. Set regular check-ins for your finances, your health, your goals, whatever matters to you. Step 3. Break it down. Big problems feel overwhelming. Small steps, much more manageable. Step 4. Talk to someone, a friend, a coach, a therapist. Support makes it easier. And finally, remind yourself of the long-term rewards of facing challenges head-on. This isn't just personal. The ostrich effect can affect entire systems. When companies, institutions, or leaders ignore hard truths, the consequences can be massive. That's why awareness is so important. Final thoughts. The ostrich effect shows us just how tempting it is to avoid discomfort. But the truth? Avoidance never solves the problem. Growth comes from facing the hard stuff, not all at once, not perfectly, but with honesty and with courage. Because when we stop burying our heads, we start building better futures. That's it for now. I'll be right here for the next chapter. Have you ever been stuck in a loop, unsure whether to take a leap? Because you're scared you might regret it? That hesitation, that fear of making the wrong choice, is something psychologists call regret aversion. It's the tendency to avoid decisions or actions that might lead to regret, even if those decisions have the potential for a positive outcome. Let's break it down. What is regret aversion? Regret aversion is more than just fear. It's the deep discomfort of imagining how we'll feel if things don't go well. So we hesitate. We play it safe. We stick to the familiar, even if it's not really working. And the irony? The very act of avoiding regret can sometimes lead us to feel it anyway. How regret aversion shows up. You might recognize it in your own life. Like when you delay making a choice because you're afraid of choosing wrong. You stay in a job that drains you because what if a new one turns out worse? You hold on to underperforming investments because selling would make the loss real. Or you avoid ending an unhealthy relationship just in case you miss them later. All of these are powered by one thing, a fear of future regret. But here's the real cost of avoidance. While regret aversion feels protective, it often leads to outcomes that are less than ideal. Missed opportunities that could have changed your life. Stagnation, where things stay the same, even when you want growth. Anxiety, caused by the stress of not deciding. Low satisfaction because you're living cautiously, not fully. Worse yet, overthinking decisions can lead to decision paralysis, where nothing gets done at all. So, how do we manage it? Let's take it step by step. 1. Recognize the fear. Start by reflecting. Ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of? What's the worst that could happen? And if it does, could I handle it? Journaling can help bring clarity to the fear. 2. Reframe regret. What if regret wasn't something to fear, but something to learn from? Every regret holds a lesson. Every misstep teaches us something. Growth often comes from discomfort, and yes, even from regret. 3. Embrace uncertainty. There's no such thing as a perfect decision, and that's okay. Instead of chasing certainty, focus on progress. Ask yourself, what's the next best step I can take today? 4. Set realistic expectations. Perfection is an illusion. Define success on your own terms. And celebrate the small wins. They build the confidence to take bigger steps. 5. Practice making decisions. Start with small choices. Try something new. Make a list of pros and cons. Use a simple framework. Each decision builds confidence. Regret aversion and growth. When you face regret, aversion head-on, you unlock your potential. You take more ownership. You trust your instincts. You start living by design, not default. This fear that once held you back becomes a signal, a guide, a chance to grow. Final thoughts. Regret aversion is common, but it doesn't have to define your life. You can move through uncertainty, choose action over avoidance, and create a life aligned with your deepest values. Not every decision will be perfect, but every step forward is progress. So don't fear regret. Let it remind you that you care, that you're growing, that you're trying. And that is something to celebrate. We'll stop here, but the story isn't over. More awaits. I'll meet you in the next one. Have you ever said what you thought people wanted to hear, instead of what you truly believed? That's the power of social desirability bias, a natural, deeply human tendency to seek approval, avoid judgment, and fit in. It shapes the way we talk, how we act, and even how we see ourselves. But here's the problem. When we let this bias take over, authenticity suffers. And so does connection, clarity, and self-understanding. In this chapter, we'll explore what social desirability bias is, why it happens, how it shows up, and what we can do to break free from it. What is social desirability bias? Social desirability bias is the tendency to present ourselves in ways we think others will find acceptable or admirable. It's not always intentional, but it often leads us to overstate the good and hide the rest. We might exaggerate how healthy we eat, how generous we are, or how much we care about a cause. At the same time, we downplay or deny things we think might make us look bad, like skipping workouts, telling white lies, or feeling overwhelmed. Why? Because we all want to be liked. We want to belong, and we want to avoid rejection. What drives this bias? Desire for acceptance. As social beings, we naturally want to be included and valued by others. Fear of judgment. We avoid criticism by shaping a cleaner version of our lives. Cultural norms. What's seen as good or right is shaped by the world around us, and we often adjust ourselves to match it. Impression management. Whether consciously or not, we curate our image to look our best. Low self-esteem. Those who rely heavily on external validation may be especially prone to this bias. How it shows up. Social desirability bias can sneak into many areas of life. Over-reporting positive behaviors, saying we work out more than we do, or claiming we always recycle. Under-reporting negative habits, downplaying how much we drink or pretending we never procrastinate. Exaggerating virtues, painting ourselves as kinder, more honest, or more selfless than we actually feel. Conforming to expectations, giving answers that match the crowd, even if they don't match our truth. The impact. At first glance, social desirability bias might seem harmless, but it can have real consequences. In research, it distorts data, making studies less reliable. In healthcare, patients may leave out symptoms or unhealthy habits, which can lead to misdiagnosis. In the workplace, employees may hide stress or dissatisfaction, preventing real solutions. In relationships, it blocks true connection. When we aren't honest, we miss out on being fully seen and supported. And internally, it can create a gap between who we are and who we pretend to be. Over time, that gap hurts. It feeds self-doubt. It chips away at self-esteem. And it can leave us feeling like imposters, even in our own lives. How to mitigate social desirability bias. Let's talk solutions for both individuals and professionals. For individuals, practice. Self-awareness, pause and ask yourself, am I being honest or trying to impress? Am I sharing my truth or avoiding discomfort? Embrace authenticity. Being real is risky, but it's also rewarding. The more you show up as yourself, the more meaningful your connections become. Challenge perfectionism. Nobody gets it right all the time. Let go of the pressure to seem perfect. Give yourself permission to be human. Surround yourself with support. Choose relationships where honesty is welcomed, not punished. Safe spaces make truth feel less scary. For researchers and survey designers, ensure anonymity. When people know their responses are private, they're more likely to be honest. Use indirect questions. Ask about behaviors in third-person scenarios to reduce pressure. Add validation scales. These help detect when people might be answering in socially desirable ways. Encourage honesty. Remind participants that their truth matters and that accurate data depends on it. Use mixed methods. Don't rely solely on self-report. Pair it with observation or behavioral data. For leaders and organizations, create a culture of honesty. Let employees know it's okay to speak up, even when it's hard. Lead authentically. When leaders are vulnerable and real, others feel safer doing the same. Offer anonymous feedback channels. Sometimes the truth needs a little cover to come out. The role of social desirability bias in personal growth. This bias isn't a flaw, it's part of being human, but it's also a call to grow. When we start choosing truth over approval, something shifts. We gain clarity, we build trust, we become more resilient. Letting go of the need to impress frees us to be ourselves and to live with greater peace and purpose. Conclusion: authenticity over approval. Social desirability bias is common, but it doesn't have to control you. The more you practice honesty, the more you step into your full self. Your worth isn't based on how others perceive you, it's based on who you are. So speak truth, live with courage. And remember, the world doesn't need your mask, it needs your authenticity. That's the end of this chapter. I'll meet you in the next one. Have you ever thought other people are way more influenced by media than I am? That's the third-person effect in action. It's a psychological phenomenon where we believe that others are more affected by media messages, like propaganda, advertising, or persuasive communication, than we are. We see ourselves as rational and immune, while thinking that everyone else is more easily swayed. The concept was introduced by sociologist W. Phillips Davison in 1983. He noticed that people consistently overestimate how much mass communication influences others, while underestimating its impact on themselves. Key traits of the third-person effect. Self-perception of immunity. We believe we're less impressionable than other people exposed to the same messages. Overestimating media's influence on others, especially those from different backgrounds, we think they're more easily manipulated. Moral judgment. Sometimes we think media is harmful to others, which leads to calls for censorship or control. Perceived superiority. This bias boosts our sense of being the more critical thinker in the room. Real-life examples. 1. Political campaigns and propaganda. People think political ads sway other voters, while they believe their own choices are logical and independent. This belief, it fuels polarization and mistrust. 2. Social media influence. Someone might say influencers affect other people, but deny their influence themselves. But trends and social proof often shape us, even when we don't notice. 3. Fake news and misinformation. People say others fall for fake news while believing they can always spot the truth. That assumption, it can lead to complacency. 4. Violent media and video games. Parents may say violent games affect other kids, but not their own. This often drives censorship, even when evidence is mixed. 5. Public health campaigns. People might believe others are swayed by fear-based messages, but not themselves. This thinking can block effective public health responses. 6. Advertising. We assume flashy ads manipulate other consumers, not us, but subtle marketing often works best without us even realizing it. Why it happens. Ego protection. It helps us feel rational and in control. Social comparison. We want to see ourselves as smarter or more critical. Group dynamics. We assume people outside our group are more gullible. Media visibility. It's easier to spot influence on others than on ourselves. Attribution bias. We attribute our choices to logic, others' choices to manipulation. Optimism. Bias, we think bad outcomes mostly happen to other people. The effects. Censorship advocacy. If we think others are vulnerable, we might support restrictions, even if harm isn't proven. Example, calls to ban violent games despite inconclusive research. Polarization. Assuming others are brainwashed can deepen divides. Example, accusations that opposing political groups are media puppets. Personal blind spots. Thinking we're immune makes us less critical of our own beliefs. Example, believing ads don't affect you, even when they do. Misguided policy. Fear-based decisions can lead to poor regulation or wasted resources. How to overcome it. Step 1. Acknowledge your own susceptibility. Even subtle influences matter. Example, notice how ads might affect your shopping. Step 2. Practice media literacy. Fact-check, identify bias, and question what you consume. Step 3. Seek diverse perspectives. Don't assume, ask. Talk to people from different backgrounds about their media experiences. Step 4. Analyze objectively. Look at real data, not assumptions, about media influence. Final thoughts. The third-person effect reveals something important. We often think others are vulnerable to media, but not us. It protects our ego, sure, but it can also distort how we see the world. By embracing awareness and media literacy, we become smarter consumers and more empathetic people. Remember this, we're all influenced. The key is realizing it. That's it for now. I'll be right here for the next chapter. Psychological traps, unrealistic expectations. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by life not turning out the way you hoped? You're not alone. There's a common trap many of us fall into, one that quietly shapes our thoughts, our goals, and even our self-worth. It's called unrealistic expectations. Psychological traps are thought or emotional patterns that lead us to make poor decisions, limit our personal growth, or increase our stress. And one of the most powerful of these is the trap of unrealistic expectations. Unrealistic expectations are beliefs about how things should be, even when those beliefs don't match reality. They can show up in all areas of life, relationships, career, personal goals, even how we see ourselves. And when these expectations go unchecked, they can lead to constant frustration, disappointment, even anxiety and depression. These expectations might sound like this. I have to be perfect in everything I do. My partner should understand me without needing to ask. If I don't succeed quickly, I'm a failure. Life should always be fair. So where do these beliefs come from? First, society and media. We're constantly surrounded by polished images. The perfect job, the perfect body, the perfect life. Social media especially shows only the highlights. It's easy to start thinking these filtered moments are what normal looks like. 2. Our upbringing. Sometimes the expectations we carry were planted early on. Maybe a parent expected straight A's or constant success, unintentionally teaching that anything less meant failure. 3. Comparison with others. It's human nature to compare. But when we measure our own struggles against someone else's best moments, we lose perspective. 4. Fear of failure. Some people aim for perfection to avoid judgment, but the pressure can be overwhelming. And what are the consequences of holding on to unrealistic expectations? 1. constant dissatisfaction. Nothing ever feels good enough. 2. Stress and anxiety. Trying to live up to impossible standards is exhausting, mentally and emotionally. 3. Low self-esteem. Repeated failure chips away at confidence. We start to believe we're not capable. 4. Strained relationships. Expecting your partner to read your mind leads to disappointment and conflict. Procrastination. The fear of imperfection can stop you from taking action altogether. So, how do we break free? 1. Be aware. Recognize when expectations feel too rigid or too high. 2. Set realistic goals. Break big goals into smaller, doable steps. Aim for progress, not perfection. 3. Embrace imperfection. Mistakes happen. That's not failure. That's learning. 4th, challenge negative thoughts. Catch those "I must be perfect" moments and reframe them. 5. Be mindful with social media. Remember, you're seeing someone's highlights, not their whole story. 6. Seek support. Talk to someone. A new perspective can shift everything. 7. Practice gratitude. Focus on what you have, not what's missing. Let's look at some real-life examples. Career: expecting your dream job right out of college. Relationships: believing your partner should always know what you need, without saying a word. Personal goals: trying to lose 20 pounds in just 2 weeks, or learning a complex skill overnight. Self-image: wanting your body to match a magazine cover, or thinking you should always feel confident. Final thoughts. Unrealistic expectations can quietly shape how we see the world and ourselves. But once we recognize them, we can start to let them go. Choose compassion over perfection. Choose growth over comparison. And most importantly, choose realistic, human-sized goals. When you do, you make space for a more balanced, fulfilling, and emotionally free life. That's the end of this chapter. I'll meet you in the next one. The self-fulfilling prophecy, a deep dive into how beliefs shape reality. The self-fulfilling prophecy is one of the most fascinating and powerful concepts in psychology. It describes a situation where a person's expectations about a future event influence their behavior in such a way that the expected outcome becomes reality. In simpler terms, what we believe about ourselves, others, or the world can shape how we act, and those actions can bring about the very results we anticipated, whether good or bad. This powerful idea highlights the deep connection between perception, behavior, and reality. Understanding the self-fulfilling prophecy. A self-fulfilling prophecy unfolds in 3 main stages. First, belief formation. You develop an expectation based on past experiences, assumptions, or societal influences. Second, behavior in line with belief. Your actions, often unconsciously, start aligning with that belief. Third, outcome reinforcement. Your behavior produces the expected result, reinforcing the belief, and the cycle continues. Example: if a student believes they're bad at math, they might avoid studying or put in minimal effort. When they perform poorly on a test, it confirms their belief, even though it started with a false assumption. Origins of the concept. The term self-fulfilling prophecy was introduced by sociologist Robert K. Merton in 1948. He described it as a false definition of a situation that triggers new behavior that makes the original false belief come true. Since then, it's been studied widely in psychology, sociology, and economics, proving its relevance in many areas of life. Types of self-fulfilling prophecies. First, positive prophecies. When optimistic beliefs lead to positive outcomes. Example: a teacher believes a student has great potential, and that belief encourages the student to thrive. Second, negative prophecies. When pessimistic beliefs lead to failure. Example: an employee doubts their abilities and underperforms due to lack of confidence or effort. Third, interpersonal prophecies. Expectations about others can shape how we treat them. Example: if you assume someone is untrustworthy, your defensive behavior might push them away, confirming your suspicion. Fourth, societal prophecies. On a larger scale, stereotypes can influence collective behavior. Example: negative beliefs about a group can lead to discrimination, which limits opportunities, reinforcing the stereotype. Psychological mechanisms behind the prophecy. Several mental processes fuel this phenomenon. Confirmation bias. We notice information that confirms what we already believe and ignore what contradicts it. Behavioral confirmation. We behave in ways that prompt others to act as we expect. Example: if you expect rejection, you might act distant, prompting others to pull away. Cognitive dissonance. When reality clashes with beliefs, we adjust our thinking or behavior to reduce discomfort. Motivational influence. Positive beliefs fuel effort and persistence. Negative ones create doubt and disengagement. Real-life examples. In education, the Pygmalion effect. Teachers were told certain students had high potential, though they were chosen at random. These students ended up performing better simply because teachers treated them differently. In relationships, if someone fears abandonment, they might become overly clingy, pushing their partner away and fulfilling the very fear they had. In the workplace, a manager doubts an employee's competence. As a result, they micromanage or exclude them, leading to poor performance that confirms the original doubt. In sports, an athlete who believes in their ability trains harder and performs with confidence. One who doubts themselves may hesitate and underperform. The impact of self-fulfilling prophecies. On individuals, these beliefs can shape our self-esteem, motivation, and life outcomes. On relationships, expectations affect how we treat others, and how they respond. On society, stereotypes and biases can lead to real, lasting harm through social structures and policies. Breaking free from negative cycles. You're not stuck. Here's how to take back control. 1. Become aware. Notice your internal beliefs, especially the negative ones. Ask, is this really true? Second, challenge and reframe, replace. I'm not good enough with, I can grow and improve. Third set, achievable goals. Break big goals into smaller steps. Celebrate progress. Fourth, seek feedback. Others can help you see what you might be missing, in a good way. Fifth, be kind to yourself. Setbacks are normal. Growth is messy. Be patient. 6. Visualize success. Picture yourself achieving what you want. Visualization builds confidence. 7. Surround yourself with positivity. Choose people who uplift and encourage you. Distance yourself from those who drag you down. Harnessing the power of positive prophecies. Self-fulfilling prophecies can work for you, not just against you. A student who believes in themselves will study harder and get better results. An entrepreneur with strong belief in their vision is more likely to take bold steps and succeed. Final thoughts? The self-fulfilling prophecy is more than just a theory. It's a tool. A reminder that your beliefs shape your actions, and your actions shape your life. Choose beliefs that empower you. Challenge the ones that hold you back. Because in the end, what you believe becomes your reality. That's the end of this chapter. I'll meet you in the next one. Hyperplanning. Understanding and managing the compulsion to overplan. Have you ever found yourself obsessing over to-do lists, planning every detail of your day, and still feeling behind? You're not alone. This is what we call hyperplanning, a behavioral pattern where the need to plan becomes overwhelming, even counterproductive. While planning helps us achieve goals, hyperplanning takes it too far. It leads to rigidity, stress, and an inability to adapt when life throws us a curveball. People who hyperplan often feel a deep urge to control outcomes, to avoid uncertainty at all costs. But in doing so, they can lose sight of the very life they're trying to live. So what drives this compulsion to plan everything? Let's explore. What drives hyperplanning? Hyperplanning is often rooted in a mix of cognitive, emotional, and situational factors. Fear of uncertainty. Life is unpredictable. Planning brings comfort, a sense of control. Perfectionism. The urge to get everything just right can lead to exhaustive planning in hopes of avoiding failure. Anxiety. For some, planning becomes a shield, a way to manage fear and stay in control. A need for control. When people don't trust outside factors, they may tighten their grip by overplanning. Cognitive overload. Life's complexity can push people to plan excessively, just to stay afloat. Past experiences. Painful memories of failure can turn planning into a kind of armor, designed to protect from hurt. Common signs of hyperplanning. Do any of these sound familiar? Overly detailed plans that account for even the most unlikely scenarios. Inflexibility when plans change. Stress when the unexpected happens. Spending more time planning than doing. Struggling to delegate or trust others. If so, you might be dealing with hyperplanning. The impact of hyperplanning. Yes, planning helps, but too much of it can work against you. It increases stress, it saps your flexibility, and it can lead to burnout. Hyperplanning can strain relationships and stop you from seizing opportunities because you were too focused on the plan to notice the moment. Worst of all, it can steal your joy. How to manage hyperplanning? It starts with awareness and a willingness to let go just a little. Here are some ways to begin. 1. Recognize the pattern. Watch yourself in action. Ask, why am I planning this much? What am I afraid of? Journaling can help clarify your thoughts. 2. Embrace uncertainty. Let go of the need for a flawless plan. Unexpected moments, they're part of life. And sometimes, they're the best part. 3. Set realistic goals. Don't plan for everything, just what matters most. Use the 80-20 rule. Focus on the 20% of actions that yield 80% of the results. 4. Limit planning time. Set a time limit for planning, then shift into action. Planning should support you, not slow you down. 5. Practice mindfulness. Bring your attention to the now. Mindful planning is intentional, not obsessive. 6. Build in flexibility that leave buffer time. Allow room for surprise. Spontaneity isn't chaos, it's freedom. 7th challenge. Perfectionism. Perfection is a myth. Celebrate progress, not perfection. Every step forward counts. 8. Delegate and trust others. You don't have to carry everything. Share the load. Let others take ownership. And trust they've got this. 9. Seek support. Sometimes hyperplanning is deeper than habits. Coaches can help with strategy. Therapists can help with healing. You don't have to go it alone. The role of hyperplanning in personal growth. At its heart, Hyperplanning is about trying to feel safe. But growth? That happens when you learn to let go. When you stop chasing control and start embracing the unknown, you become stronger, more adaptable, and more alive. Conclusion: embracing balance and flexibility. Hyperplanning is common, but it's not permanent. You can find a better rhythm, one that honors both structure and freedom. Remember, life isn't meant to be controlled. It's meant to be lived. So plan, but also let go. Be prepared, but also be open. You have the power to step out of overplanning and into the richness of life itself. That's it for now. I'll be right here for the next chapter. Perfectionism. It's the quiet force driving so many to achieve, to exceed, to pursue the extraordinary. But it's also the same force that leaves them exhausted, anxious, and never quite satisfied. Perfectionism is complex. It pushes people to strive for flawlessness, to set sky-high standards, and to chase excellence with relentless intensity. On the surface, it looks like dedication, ambition, drive. But underneath, it's often rooted in something deeper. A fear of failure, rejection, or not being enough. It's a mindset that can produce brilliance and burnout all at once. The bright side of perfectionism. When it's healthy, perfectionism can be a gift. It motivates people to go above and beyond, to sharpen their skills, and to produce incredible work. Think about the precision of a master watchmaker, the persistence of a scientist breaking boundaries, or the endless rehearsals of a world-class performer. Perfectionism, when balanced, can fuel mastery, creativity, and innovation. Perfectionists often carry a strong sense of responsibility. They're detail-oriented, and they inspire others to raise the bar. In high-stakes environments, this trait can shine, setting people apart as leaders and pioneers. The dark side of perfectionism. But there's another side, a darker one. When perfectionism tips too far, it becomes a trap. Unrealistic goals, self-worth tied to achievement, the constant fear of falling short, it leads to stress, anxiety, even depression. And one of its sneakiest effects? Procrastination. The pressure to get things perfect becomes so overwhelming that some people don't even start. Or they start, but never finish. They delay because nothing ever feels good enough. That pressure builds, and the cycle repeats. Relationships can suffer too. Perfectionists don't just expect a lot from themselves. They often expect it from others too. This can lead to friction, misunderstandings, isolation. They may struggle to delegate. They may resist trusting others to meet their standards. And because they're so hard on themselves, they often struggle to receive praise, to feel pride, to simply say, "That was enough." Where does perfectionism come from? It's not always obvious, but perfectionism usually has deep roots. For some, it's learned, shaped by how they were raised. When achievement is praised more than effort, kids grow up believing mistakes are unacceptable. In a culture that glorifies success and hides failure, perfectionism can feel like protection. For others, it comes from within. A deep need for control, a hunger for validation, a way to silence that inner voice whispering, "You're not enough." But external validation doesn't last, and perfectionists often end up chasing it endlessly. Breaking free from the trap. So, how do we escape? It begins with a shift, a new mindset. Start by embracing imperfection. Mistakes aren't failures. They're part of growth, and growth is what life is really about. Practice self-compassion. It's okay to rest, to slow down, to be human. Set goals that are realistic, not punishing. Celebrate progress, no matter how small. Tools that can help. Mindfulness can make a real difference. Meditation, journaling, even just a quiet moment to breathe. These practices ground us. They remind us we are more than what we achieve. Therapy, especially cognitive behavioral therapy, can also help. A good therapist can uncover the beliefs driving perfectionism and help rewrite the story. One where your worth isn't measured by output, but by being. Embracing the beauty of imperfection. In the end, perfectionism teaches us something important. We don't need to be flawless to be worthy. We don't need to do everything perfectly to matter. As the Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi reminds us, there is beauty in imperfection, in the cracks, in the flaws, in the real, raw parts of us that make us human. Let go of the need to be perfect, and you just might find joy, freedom, and meaning waiting on the other side. Perfectionism may always be part of who you are, but it doesn't have to define you. You can strive for greatness, while still embracing the beautiful, messy journey of being human. That's the end of this chapter. I'll meet you in the next one. Anxiety over uncertainty. Understanding and managing the fear of the unknown. Have you ever felt paralyzed by the thought of not knowing what's coming next? That fear of the unknown, called anxiety over uncertainty, is something many of us face. It's when the unpredictability of life triggers overwhelming stress, worry, or fear. Whether it's your career, your health, relationships, or the world at large, uncertainty is everywhere. And for some, that can feel unbearable. Let's explore what makes uncertainty so difficult and how you can respond to it in a healthier way. The nature of uncertainty. Uncertainty means not having clear answers about the future. It shows up in so many areas of life. Will I find the right partner? What if I get sick? Will I get that job? What happens if things go wrong in the world? Some people handle these unknowns with ease. Others, though, feel overwhelmed. And that's often due to a trait called intolerance of uncertainty. This trait makes it difficult to sit with the discomfort of not knowing what comes next. Why uncertainty triggers. Anxiety. First, there's a need for control. People who struggle with uncertainty often try to prepare for every possible outcome, thinking it will help. But constant worry rarely brings relief. Second, there's emotional vulnerability. Not knowing what's ahead can make you feel helpless, and without good emotional regulation, that helplessness quickly becomes anxiety. Lastly, we often see uncertainty as a threat, even when the situation isn't dangerous. This leads to catastrophic thinking, always imagining the worst-case scenario. The impact of anxiety over uncertainty. It can take a serious toll. Chronic worry. The mind spins with what-ifs, draining your mental energy. Avoidance. You might dodge uncertain situations, missing out on growth. Procrastination. Fear of making a wrong choice leaves you stuck. Physical symptoms. Headaches, tension, fatigue, even stomach issues. Relationship strain. Needing constant reassurance can push others away. Strategies to manage anxiety. Over uncertainty. First, build tolerance. Start small, face low-stakes uncertainties. Over time, your brain learns you can handle not knowing. Second, practice mindfulness. Use breathing or meditation to stay grounded in the present moment. It helps stop the spiral of future-focused fear. Third, challenge your thoughts. Ask yourself, how likely is this outcome? What's the evidence, both for and against it? 4, focus on what you can control. If you're anxious about a job interview, focus on preparation, not the outcome. 5th, reframe uncertainty. See it as an opportunity, not just a threat. 6th, set realistic expectations. Life is unpredictable. You don't have to know everything to keep going. 7, limit information overload. Constant news checking or Googling symptoms? That only fuels anxiety. Set boundaries. 8. Seek support. Talk to someone. Even just saying things out loud can help. 9. Take action where you can break problems into small steps. Then tackle each one. 10th, be kind to yourself. You're doing your best in uncertain times, and that matters. The power of acceptance. Acceptance means allowing uncertainty to exist without letting it control you. It's not giving up. It's recognizing what's beyond your control and choosing to let it be. Focus instead on what is in your hands. Real-life scenarios. Career anxiety. A recent graduate feels lost without a job lined up. Instead of panicking, they network, build new skills, and keep applying. Health worries. Someone waiting on test results chooses mindfulness and fills their time with joy and purpose. Relationship doubts. Someone feeling unsure about their relationship opens up honestly and focuses on connection in the present. Conclusion. Anxiety over uncertainty is a deeply human experience, but when it overwhelms you, it can hold you back. With practice, you can build tolerance. Stay grounded, focus on what you can control. Remember, uncertainty isn't just fear. It can also be a space for growth, surprise, and transformation. You don't have to have all the answers. You just need the courage to keep moving forward, even when the path isn't clear. That's it for now. I'll be right here for the next chapter. Fear of disappointment, understanding and overcoming the paralysis of unmet expectations. The fear of disappointment is a deeply rooted emotional struggle. It's the anxiety that rises when we imagine failure, rejection, or simply not meeting expectations. Whether it's a fear of letting ourselves down or others or life itself, this fear can be paralyzing. It holds us back from taking risks, chasing dreams, or connecting deeply with others. Yes, it's natural to want to avoid disappointment, but when that fear becomes excessive, it starts to limit our growth. It can stifle creativity and lead to a life filled with missed opportunities and unrealized potential. What drives the fear of disappointment? This fear doesn't come from nowhere. It's often rooted in our past, shaped by beliefs we carry, and sometimes amplified by the world around us. Let's look at what might be fueling it. Past trauma or letdowns. Maybe you've failed before, or been rejected, or had your hopes crushed. Those moments leave emotional scars, and they whisper, "Don't risk it again." Perfectionism. Perfectionists set the bar impossibly high, and when the fear of not meeting those standards kicks in, it becomes easier to freeze than to fail. Low self-esteem. If you doubt your worth or your ability, you may start believing you'll always disappoint, or that you don't deserve success to begin with. Fear of judgment. Sometimes it's not about us. It's about what others will think. We fear letting them down, craving approval and dreading criticism. Unrealistic expectations. When we expect life or people to always live up to our ideals, disappointment becomes inevitable. Avoidance of vulnerability. Disappointment hurts because it requires us to be open, to be vulnerable. And if that feels unsafe, we may avoid taking any emotional risk at all. The impact of this fear. The fear of disappointment doesn't just stay in our heads, it seeps into our lives. It leads to procrastination and inaction. We avoid starting new things, just in case we fail. We hold back, and little by little, we stall. It causes missed opportunities. By sidestepping anything uncertain, we end up passing on experiences, relationships, and growth. It strains relationships. When we try too hard not to let others down, we fall into people-pleasing. That leads to imbalance and sometimes resentment. It fuels chronic anxiety. Always bracing for something to go wrong keeps us in a state of emotional tension. And it builds self-limiting beliefs. Over time, we begin to believe things like, I'm not good enough. These thoughts chip away at our motivation and our self-worth. How to overcome the fear of disappointment. The good news? This fear doesn't have to control you. Here's how you can start to take your power back. Reframe disappointment. It's not a failure, it's a part of life. Every disappointment carries a lesson if we're willing to look for it. Set realistic expectations. Ask yourself, are my standards achievable? Remind yourself that perfection isn't the goal, progress is. Embrace vulnerability. Taking emotional risks is a sign that you're showing up fully, not hiding in fear. Practice self-compassion. When things go wrong, be kind to yourself. Everyone stumbles. Your worth isn't tied to your wins or your losses. Focus on effort, not outcome. Celebrate the fact that you tried, that you showed up, that you gave it your all, no matter the result. Challenge catastrophic thinking. When your mind goes to the worst-case scenario, pause. Ask, what's the actual chance of that happening? And if it did happen, could I handle it? Take small steps. Don't jump into your biggest fear first. Start small. Let yourself get used to uncertainty, little by little. Practice gratitude. Shift your focus to what's already good in your life. Gratitude grounds you and helps reduce the fear of loss. Seek support. You don't have to go it alone. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, a family member, a therapist. Celebrate your courage. Facing your fear, even a little bit, is a huge step. Honor that bravery. Let it fuel your next move. Embracing life's imperfections. Disappointment is something we all face, but it doesn't have to hold you back. When you reframe it, when you set kinder expectations, when you treat yourself with compassion, its grip weakens. Remember this, a life without disappointment is a life without risk. And a life without risk is a life without growth, connection, or meaning. So take that leap, trust yourself, and know that whatever happens, you'll find your way through. Disappointment is not the end. It's just one step on the path to a richer, fuller, and more courageous life. That's the end of this chapter. I'll meet you in the next one. Attachment to outcomes. Letting go and embracing the journey. Have you ever poured your heart into something only to feel disheartened when the results didn't match your expectations? That feeling. That tight grip on a specific outcome. That's called attachment to outcomes. It's the tendency to focus so much on the result that we forget to enjoy the process. We lose the magic of being present. Now, don't get me wrong, it's natural to have dreams, goals, desires. But when we become overly attached to how things should turn out, we invite stress, disappointment, even a sense of emptiness. We begin to measure our worth, not by who we are, but by what we achieve. Why do we become attached to outcomes? Cultural and societal pressures. Many of us grow up in environments where success is everything, where results define worth, where productivity equals value. It's no surprise we start to believe, if I'm not achieving, I'm not enough. Fear of failure. This fear can be crippling. The idea that failure defines us, or makes us unworthy, can lead to an unhealthy obsession with results. Perfectionism. If you're a perfectionist, you might chase flawless results, not because you love the work, but because you fear criticism. Identity and self-worth. Sometimes the outcome becomes who we are. If I don't get the job, I'm a failure. If the relationship ends, I must not be lovable. Lack of control. Life is unpredictable. And in that uncertainty, we often cling to outcomes, hoping it'll give us a sense of control. The consequences of attachment. Chronic stress and anxiety. Always worrying about the what-ifs. The will I succeed? It weighs on our health. Diminished joy. When our eyes are only on the prize, we miss the joy of the journey. Fear of taking risks. When outcomes matter too much, we avoid risks, and that stunts our growth. Strained relationships. Expecting others to meet rigid outcomes can lead to disconnection and tension. Self-worth issues. When things don't go as planned, we question our value. Maybe I'm not good enough. How to let go. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means shifting your focus from the result to the experience. Focus on the process. Ask yourself, what am I learning right now? How can I be more present? Set intentions, not expectations. Intentions guide your energy. Say, I intend to give my best instead of, I must succeed. Practice mindfulness. Grounding, breathwork, quiet reflection. These help anchor you in the present. Embrace uncertainty. You can't control everything, but you can control your attitude and effort. Reframe failure. Not the opposite of success, it's part of it. Ask, what did I gain from this? Celebrate the effort, not just the win. Applaud yourself for showing up. Detach self-worth from results. You are not your resume. Your worth comes from your kindness, your resilience, your truth. Adopt a growth mindset. View mistakes as lessons, setbacks as setups, challenges as your greatest teachers. Visualize letting go. Picture your attachment like a balloon. Now, let it go. Watch it float. Feel the lightness in your chest. Seek balance. Yes, set goals. But stay open to surprises. Life often brings something better than we imagined. Embracing the beauty of the unknown. Letting go is not a one-time decision. It's a practice, a mindset, a journey. When you shift from chasing outcomes to embracing the now, you invite joy, resilience, and deep fulfillment. Remember this, life is not a straight road. It's a winding, colorful, sometimes messy, beautiful ride. So loosen your grip, open your heart, and trust that the journey itself is where the magic happens. Congratulations on completing this book. Remember, true learning doesn't happen just by listening. It comes alive when you practice. So take what you've learned and apply it, even in small steps. Every bit of practice builds lasting knowledge. If you found this book valuable, consider subscribing so you won't miss the next one.